Hello, everyone. Today we will be talking about rhetorical appeals and analysis. So before we go into the information for today, go ahead and open up your virtual writer's notebook so you can take notes in the class notes section. Or if you have like a physical composition notebook that you take notes in, you can go ahead and use that as well, so that you can jot down notes as you explore these slides. So let's go ahead and get started. So this assignment is divided up into two parts and it has two different due dates. So I just wanted to make that clear for you guys. The first part is to review the slides in this presentation and to take notes. And you should have this completed by Wednesday, September 23rd by class time. So when we meet for our synchronous classes, and then make sure you just bring your materials to class. And then the second part will be to complete a journal entry in which you will be practicing using these rhetorical appeals that we talk about today. And that will be due by Friday, September 25th at 11:59 p.m. And you are going to be submitting that on Google Classroom. You will not be completing it in your virtual writer's notebook this time, if you recall from Monday's class. And so there will be a document that you'll use and you'll submit that one document to Google Classroom. So our objectives for today, today we're going to review some rhetorical devices and appeals, and then we're also going to work to apply these terms to a given rhetorical situation. So if you recall from last week's lesson on Intro to Rhetoric, you saw this diagram, which was called the rhetorical triangle of appeals. So this is a very basic version of the diagram, and today we're going to elaborate by adding some more terms and information. So the three new terms that you guys are going to be introduced to are ethos, logos, and pathos. So ethos refers to the author's credibility or the speaker's credibility to send whatever message that they're sending. So here we're trying to look at what does the author know? What kind of expertise does this person have? What kind of beliefs do they hold? What claims are they prepared to make? And then also, like, how are they providing this evidence? In terms of pathos, pathos means appeal to emotion. So what tactics are the author using in order to persuade the audience? And so here you have to really think about the relationship that the speaker and the audience has. And you want to see how the speaker, writer, author works to gain the audience's trust, right? Because if the audience doesn't trust the speaker, then they're really not going to be persuaded by whatever message is being said here. And then finally, like, what are the reasons that the audience might find the speaker to be credible or even like show a lack thereof, right? Maybe the speaker isn't credible, and how does the audience react to that? And then the final thing that we're looking at is logos. So this is kind of looking at the logic that the speaker uses, and then also how the audience relates to the subject matter. So what is it that the audience knows about the subject? What beliefs do they have? And then when the speaker is delivering this message, what counter arguments might the audience members have in response to the speaker? So these are all things that we have to consider when we're trying to determine the center of this triangle, right? Like, what is the purpose of this message? Why is the author or writer or speaker delivering this message? All of these play a factor. So we're going to apply our knowledge of the rhetorical triangle to an example today. So if you look at the screen, this poster is an iconic poster that a lot of you might have seen in a history class or even just online. So we're going to analyze this poster today using the terms that we just covered. So as you guys remember from last week's synchronous sessions, right, it's always important to do the additional research to gain context. So here, before I even decide what the message is, what the author is using to appeal to the audience. I want to know, like, what is this poster? When was it created? Why was it created? So I'm going to do a little bit of research. And so from my research, I learned that this is Rosie the Riveter. She's an icon in American history, and we're going to get a little bit more into that as we get deeper into the analysis. But this poster was used as propaganda from World War II to empower women. And then the final thing that kind of helped me with my background was like knowing who the producer of this image was, and it was J. Howard Miller. So I'm going to start off by looking at J. Howard Miller, who was the producer of this image, and I'm going to think about like what is the credibility that he has to produce such an image. So upon research, he was widely unknown, but I do know that he attended the Pittsburgh School of Art. So he does have some credibility in terms of like producing an image. I also learned that he was commissioned by the Westinghouse Electric Company to create ads. And here, and this is a little bit of history here, um, during World War II, there was an increasing number of men who were being recruited to the war. So when this happened, it left a lot of vacancies in the workforce, especially factories, that needed to be filled in order to keep the economy going. And so J. Howard Miller was commissioned by Westinghouse Electric Company to create ads, and he was commissioned to create the specific ad because they wanted to persuade women to join the workforce. This was huge at the time because women were typically at home taking care of the household, taking care of children, but they were needed during this time, right? Because they were not the ones going to war. And so this was a way to kind of show, not show, but persuade women to join the workforce to help work in factories. And so while J. Howard Miller was widely unknown, this poster was commissioned or more like supported by the US government. So if you look in the bottom left corner, it says War Production Coordinating Committee. So again, like part of the government, and during this time, the government was a very trustworthy source. So the public was really relied on the government for information, right? They knew what was happening in the war. They knew the state of the economy. And so the public really trusted the government to do the right thing during this time. So that's just a little bit of information about the author and the intent behind creating such an image. So then when I look at the appeal to the audience, right, using emotion, thinking about like the tactics that the producer uses, so in this case, J. Howard Miller, in persuading the audience or to relate with the audience, here are a few things that I discovered. So the first thing is that we see this image of a woman who is wearing a red bandana, who has her sleeves rolled up. She's wearing a blue work uniform, and then she's kind of flexing her muscles, right? And if you look at her face, she has like a very serious face, like she means business. And so a few things that were kind of picked out from this. And when you're looking at an image and you're doing this rhetorical analysis, the positioning of the objects and the colors that are used often play a really big role in like the message that the producer is trying to send. So in this case, when you look at her flexing her muscles, you might think that she's like, oh, I'm strong and like this is all about me. But really, this motion of her flexing her muscles was a way to promote community. So that paired with the speech bubble above, where she's like, we can do it, right? She's like, yes, like women are strong. We have the ability to do these tasks that men could. And so like together that shows the message that like she's trying to build this team of women who are empowered to join the workforce. Then I look at the colors that are being used here. So I look at yellow. Yellow brings a feeling of optimism, brings positivity. When you look at the combination of red, white, and blue, right, you see the blue in her work uniform, you see the red and white in her bandana, and then there are blue areas in other parts of the poster. First, that tells me that like this is a patriotic symbol, right? Rosie the Riveter is an American icon. And to join the workforce, being a woman, is like an American thing to do. The red specifically denotes masculinity. So again, showing that like women are capable of doing the same tasks that men could. And then one thing that I discovered during my research was that blue was often seen as like a calming color. So while the yellow kind of brought a lot of energy to this piece, and so did the red, the blue was kind of a source of calming. Then you look at the text and it says, "We can do it," right? It is very evident, is very, it's not invisible, right? It's very bold and positive, and you can see that it's in a speech bubble because the phrase is supposed to come from Rosie the Riveter. Fun fact though, originally this was not um, attached to anybody named Rosie. This was just kind of what it is. But the name Rosie the Riveter kind of came later. And there are a lot of debates about like who Rosie the Riveter actually was. So then the last thing we're going to look at is the appeal to logic, right? So what are some elements that the author is using to back up these claims, to back up the fact that like women are strong enough to join the workforce, right? Women are so powerful that they can work in these factories. So again, I'm going back to the flexed muscle, right? What this shows is that if you join the workforce, you can look just like this. You can look strong, you can look patriotic, you can look powerful. And so that's what, again, the evidence is that they're showing to back up their claims. Usually in writing, it's easier to tell what these pieces of evidence are. With images, it's kind of something that you have to work to figure out or do, again, that additional research. And then finally, I want to go back to this red, white, and blue, right? It also sends this message that here's Rosie the Riveter, and she's doing her patriotic duty while the men are at war. As a woman, she is doing her patriotic duty by joining the workforce and working in these factories to help the economy along. So as I did more research, you can see that there are now a lot of images that kind of mimic the Rosie the Riveter poster, right? And so you can see how powerful this image is because it has been used in multiple settings. And even today, right, there are people who are using this as a sign of like woman empowerment. It's been used across a lot of different companies. It's been used across a lot of different movements. So just like the message that this sent still is living today. So what you guys are going to do, now that you've seen an example of how the rhetorical triangle comes into play, you guys are going to work to analyze another image. And you're going to do this through journal entry number 3, where you will write 1 to 2 paragraphs, so about 250 to 350 words with an analysis of this photo to the left. So here are the following prompts that you're going to respond to in your entry. So 1, again, do that additional research. What's the background information? Give us some context on this photograph. 2, think about the claim that is being made via this image. So what is the artist trying to tell us from this image? What is the purpose of the artist producing this image? Then look at the credibility that the producer of this image has. So that's the ethos. And then the pathos, you're going to look at what are the tactics or what are the elements that the artist uses to appeal to the audience's emotion. What do they want us to relate to? What do they want us to feel by looking at this picture? And then finally, you're going to look at the logo. So what is the evidence that the producer uses, or the artist rather, to back up this claim that you discover a few questions prior. Since you will be conducting research, I do want you to cite your sources, and I'm going to give you more information about how to do that on the assignment page itself. So, as always, feel free to drop by office hours or reach out to me via email if you do have questions. This is just a short lesson on rhetorical appeals and just the beginning of our analysis. And we're going to definitely dive in deeper as the unit goes on.